Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So there's a lot of people that have reached out and said, you know what, Sean, you need to do more videos for us pickers out there or wannabe pickers that are operating the antiques and collectibles trade. And literally over the last year, I kind of avoided this topic on this channel because with the coronavirus and the pandemic in full swing, it pretty much was a useless topic because most antique marts, most garage sales, most flea markets were just not happening. Well, as we start to get to the tail end of the pandemic, knock on wood, hopefully, I do know the Delta variant is starting to rear its ugly head, but I'm assuming at some point the pandemic is going to end. And right now, it is August 2021, at least in the great state of Pennsylvania. I know that you can pretty much go to flea markets, you can go to antique fairs, you can go to garage sales at will. So I'm going to assume most of you out there, whether you live in Pennsylvania, whether you live in another state, whether you live in another country, most likely you are free to at least go into antique marts, antique malls, flea markets, garage sales, whatever it is that you have in your own country. So I do want to talk about this now that things are starting to open back up. There is one book that I recommend that you all read, whether you're involved with collecting, speculating, investing, dealing, or maybe you want to try your luck at being a picker in the year 2021. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be very difficult because obviously everybody with a smartphone and eBay knows the value of a lot of these items. If you go to most flea markets, you're going to see a lot of household junk. You're going to see a lot of stuff that is very common that a lot of people are trying to sell for a premium because they saw it online selling for X number of dollars. They think now they're common Nintendo 64 games, they're common G.I. Joe action figures, they're common vintage comic books are all worth a premium. It does not help when you have the overall news media now reporting on high-profile auction sales, whether they're occurring in video games, comic books, coins, whatever the market is, or you have the average armchair wannabe antique expert tuning into American Pickers, Pawn Stars, Antiques Roadshow every week. So now they think grandma's china, grandma's silverware that has no silver in it is all worth a fortune. So this is really complicating the market for the average picker, for the average flea market connoisseur. But there is one book that I think you all should read, and it is by Joe Willard, and there are actually two editions to this book, and it is called The Picker's Bible. Now, I will tell you, the best bang for your buck is going to be the second edition. They still do put out the first edition. You can probably find both fairly cheaply online, but I will tell you, if you have a chance, please get the second edition. The second edition goes into more greater detail on these objects, and it offers hints for picking these particular items in the modern era. Now, some of you will get more out of this than others, depending on what your experience is as a secondary market seller, as a wholesaler, as a flea marketer. If you have a lot of experience, you should still read this book because you're bound to get something out of it. What I like about this book is it does talk an awful lot about the antiques trade. And I've honestly said this before. In the year 2021, if you're somebody that watches this channel and you're solely into collectibles, I have no disrespect towards you, but I really think at some point you need to take the leap and start to learn about the antique side of the trade. The antique side of the trade, there is a lot of opportunity to explore and take advantage of in the year 2021. Because if you go to a flea market or an antique mart in the year 2021, the average person knows the value of collectibles because the barrier to entry is quite low. However, when you start talking about antique glass bottles, marbles, pottery, art glass, traditional antiques, vintage advertising, vintage tools, cast iron antiques and collectibles, those particular objects, the average person doesn't really understand the idiosyncrasies of the market and the value of those particular objects. That's where a book like this can at least get your mind thinking in that direction so that maybe you miss out on an overpriced collection of G.I. Joe or Star Wars figures or even Nintendo games. But maybe you come across an antique glass bottle that you happen to research, you know the value of it, and you go, wow, this antique dealer only wants $75 for this glass bottle. I saw 3 of these that I knew were legit sell on eBay for $150 a piece. So I'll gladly buy this bottle for $75 and I'll flip it, even if I get $130 or $140 on eBay after fees, even if I throw in free shipping, I'm still making money. You guys got to understand that these markets are evolving. This thing that we're all a part of now has become so investment driven that I don't see it ever going back to the way it was before. There's too many hype-driven YouTube content creators. There's too many auction companies. There's too much of the news media hyping up the value of these objects that we're not going to be able to put it back in the bag now that it's been proverbially released. This is the way forward. So whether you like it or not, whether you hate the increased competition out there, whether you hate the fact that even my channel or every video that I put out is financial driven in nature when we're talking about antiques and collectibles, this is the way it's going to be forward, guys. Whether we're looking at pop culture collectibles, fine art, antiquities, coins, comic books, video games, toys, art pottery, it doesn't matter the market. It is all money driven in the year 2021. And I'm going to state this. If it wouldn't be money driven, if that particular collecting category is not driven by money, by making Benjamins, guess what? Most people are not going to want to collect that category in the year 2021. And if you don't believe me, look at the market for Pez dispensers. Look at the market for vintage toy trains. Look at the market for Hummels or other antique markets that are struggling right now because there's no investment potential in those markets. It is all about the Benjamins, baby. And I did not make these rules. I want to make that very clear. As a consultant in the trade, as a columnist in the trade, it is my job to report to you on these trends and be honest and transparent about it. So I'm just telling you, we are not going to go back to a point where you're going to go to a flea market and every week there's going to be Nintendo games that are only selling for a couple of bucks a piece. Now, it could be if they are the sucky Nintendo games, you know, like your Tecmo Bowls, your sports games, maybe a copy of Kung Fu and ice hockey thrown in for good measure. But overall, most people know that this stuff has value and there's a lot of people out there that want this stuff. And as a result, we're not going to go backwards, even if these markets suffer a correction, because price memory is everything. Again, if you want a market that isn't investment driven, like if we talk video games, go after pre-Nintendo video games. You can go to a flea market, you can still come across Atari 2600 games thrown in a bin that are $1 or $2 a piece. You can still come across somebody that'll sell you the whole box of Atari 2600 games for $10, $20. I've seen it happen. If, however, those games were Nintendo games, that is not going to happen on average. If you come across a box of Transformers, G.I. Joe, vintage Star Wars, He-Man, most likely people know the value of this stuff, guys. I just don't see it changing. I'm sorry. So if you want to take advantage of opportunities out there, you got to learn other markets. And the most basic market that is more complex than collectibles for some of you to learn is, I hate to say it, antiques. And yes, you are going to have a learning curve ahead of you if you choose to get into that market. But overall, there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. So please take it. Please embrace it and continue to watch a lot of the content that I produce, because I do videos where I teach the basics of the antiques marketplace. I've done videos on art. I've done videos on coins. I even did videos on the differences between rustic and primitive, just to teach you guys how these markets work, how you should be looking at these markets. I know those videos don't get a lot of views, but that is really where the future of opportunities is in these markets as collectibles become more and more valuable. At some point, there needs to be a correction in the collectibles marketplace to create more opportunity for the average Timmy, Kimmy, and Poindexter. And it'll be very interesting when that happens. We will have to see if a lot of these starry-eyed speculators and investors put their money where their mouth is, or if they run away from the market when it falls 10, 20, 30, 40, possibly 50% or more. Because I can tell you, back in the 90s, when the Beanie Baby bubble first. Say that 10 times fast. A lot of the people that were operating in that market, they did not want anything to do with anything collectible. Even if they were collecting Beanie Babies and rare comic books, or Beanie Babies and Pez dispensers and coins, or Beanie Babies, video games, and rare toys, they pretty much wanted nothing to do with collectibles when that market crashed, because now they said, whoa, we weren't aware that these markets were that fickle. Again, I end almost every video like this. The only constant in the antiques and collectibles trade is change. So what I am telling you, if you want to make money in the antiques and collectibles trade in 2021 and going forward, you must embrace change. It is your only option. Otherwise, you're going to get wiped out. You're going to be like a lot of the speculators on eBay in the 1990s. When the market changed, they could not adjust to the shifting marketplace along with it, and they ended up exiting the antiques and collectibles trade. And to be fair, some of them did walk away with a sizable amount of money if they got out in time. Others, though, lost their proverbial ass holding on to objects that in the year 2021 have no market value whatsoever. So the only constant is change. Embrace it, read the books that I recommend, learn from it, and you can eventually profit from it. But it takes energy, it takes knowledge, and it takes an understanding where you have to have the patience and time to learn these markets. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.